It's 1943, and the Atlantic has become a graveyard for U-boat crews. And this ship, the USS Bory, is looking for blood. What happens next is one of the wildest destroyer versus submarine fights of the entire war. Keep watching our compilation of the most unbelievable U-boat battles to find out more.
It's 1 a.m. on the 1st of November 1943, and the USS Bory is hunting for a U-boat in the midst of a terrible storm in the North Atlantic.
Contact 8,000 yards.
A contact appears on the ship's radar. In command is 30-year-old Lieutenant Charles Harris Hutchins. He quickly issues the order to give chase at maximum speed.
Flank speed.
And the USS Bory powers through 15-foot waves. But nearby, around 5 nautical miles away, sits U-405, a Type 7C U-boat under the command of Korvettenkapitän Rolf Heinrich Hoffmann. The U-boat is surfaced and it's recharging its batteries under the cover of darkness when, deep within the ship, the hydrophone operator hears something. It's the unique telltale sound of propellers churning through the water.
Schnelles Schiff, Peilung 90.
Hoffmann knows there's no friendly ships in the area. This has to be an American.
Stationen. Alarmtauchgang.
Alarms ricochet through the U-boat, and the 45-man crew urgently prepare to dive below the surface. Back on the USS Bory, Hutchins searches in the darkness for any sign of his enemy. He can't see a thing, but the radar operator continues providing updates. Hutchins orders course corrections in response.
2000. Bearing 265.
Until the U-boat vanishes from their radar screens.
Contact has been lost, sir.
The news sends chills down Hutchins' spine. The U-boat has submerged, and that can only mean one thing. The Germans know they're here, and now the two are in a deadly game of cat and mouse.
At speed, and he returns on sonar.
With the submarine submerged, sonar tracking the echoes from a U-boat is their only chance. There's a contact.
Sonar contact 2,000 yards, bearing 170. Turn 170.
Hutchins orders a course to intercept. On board the U-boat, the submariner on the hydrophone listens intently, but it can only hear Bory's general direction. The data isn't precise enough for a counterattack. What he can hear is ever louder propellers and the regular sonar pulse emanating from Bory.
Sie sind sehr nah, Herr Kommandant.
Hot backboard.
Meanwhile, aboard the USS Bory, the sonar operators track the U-boat, drifting into range.
600 yards. Prepare port launchers for depth charges.
The crew move quickly, left side depth charge racks clattering as they ready the release. Then, the sonar trace shifts abruptly.
Contact has been lost, sir.
The U-boat has slipped directly beneath their keel.
500 yards. Now bearing starboard, drawing fast. Full to starboard.
Hutchins orders a hard turn to pursue the target, swinging the rear of the ship towards the submarine to bring the depth charges to bear.
300 yards. Fire!
The charges launch off with loud thunks, flying through the air and splashing into the sea, right by the U-405's nose. The U-boat is rocked by the blasts. The shockwave punches the submarine's bow.
Herr Kommandant.
Flooding is impossible to stem when the submarine is fully submerged, as the water pressure is too great, so Hoffmann is left without any choice.
Auftauchen. Geschütze bemannt.
USS Bory sails past, and our sailors look back at the scene of the explosion. The water's still settling from the blasts when they witness the mighty U-boat burst from under the sea.
Surface down our stern. Turn on the searchlight. Inform lights where to point.
The lights come on, and U-405 is immediately clear in the light. Dozens of Germans are pouring out of the hatches, and they rush to man their 20mm guns and open fire. The weapons come alive with loud bangs, sending shells streaking over the waves. The shells slam into the USS Bory's hull and litter the superstructure, sending American sailors diving for cover. On U-405, German sailors brave the heavy wind and waves. The Bory spotlight shines directly on their faces as they fire away with 20mm guns. But they know it's not enough. The German sailors scramble to ready their much more powerful 88mm deck gun. Hutchins knows the danger and acts swiftly.
All guns! Local control! Point of fire!
The guns open fire. The first salvos fly over the Germans' heads and splash into the water behind. But it doesn't take long for Bori's 20mm cannons to find their mark. Shells crash through the U-405's forecastle, devastating the German gunners, including those manning the vital 88mm.
Schwere Verluste gemeldet.
Deckgeschütze verstärken! Feuer halten!
There's a stream of determined men. They don't last. They fall in droves, sliding into the deep amid the fray. Brave men reach the 88mm and try to aim. But when they look down the sights, they find themselves staring directly at a wall of 4-inch main guns aimed towards them. They're too late. The shells slam directly into the forecastle in a brutal strike. When the smoke clears, U-405's 88mm gun and its valiant crew are gone. Bori continues its wide-about turn while pummeling the enemy without relent. But it's not enough. Hutchins knows conning tower hits will never sink it. He needs to deal a fatal blow.
Ram it.
The helmsman steers the ship towards the target as Hutchins warns the crew.
Stand by for a ram! Stand by for a ram!
All hands brace as the ship barrels down towards the sub at 27 knots. USS Bori crashes directly into the side of U-405, which buckles her bow. Deep inside Bori, Chief Engineer Kenneth Miles Lucas sees torrents of water gushing from the fissures.
Get me the repair team!
Over in U-405, Hauptmann stumbles to his feet and orders,
Angriff!
German sailors charge out of the hatches, and a massive firefight breaks out on both decks. Bori's sailors have Tommy guns, pistols and rifles, but the rest fight with whatever they can find. Flare pistols, shell casings, entire misfired shells, and even kitchen knives are fair tools in this chaos. The Germans fight back as best they can, but the Americans have cover and the advantage of elevation. The U-boat's deck grants no cover, and its last defenders don't stand a chance. The U-405, incredibly, is still afloat and functional, but the crew is devastated, and they've lost all their weapons, except the torpedoes.
Volle Fahrt zurück! Hard backboard!
U-405 pulls with all its power in an attempt to slip from Bori's grasp. The Americans watch as the U-405 starts to move underneath them. But not everything is going the Americans' way. Deep in the engine compartment, engineers attempt speedy repairs as the water quickly rises. Lucas and his men continue to work the turbines, battling through the water. The ship moves forward, now laden with hundreds of tons of water filling up its hull. Bori's gunners continue to fire, but they can't strike a final blow.
Prepare torpedoes!
One of USS Bori's triple torpedo mounts stirs to life and aims its payload towards the target.
Fire!
A torpedo blasts out to sea and tears a path towards the enemy, but misses. Hauptmann is in a terrible position. The ship's managing, but only 15 of his 45-man crew remain. Heinrich orders a Hail Mary.
Wenden! Torpedos klar machen!
On the USS Bori, the men see the U-405 turning around to attack. Hutchins, though, has a plan.
Disable the searchlight!
The light that had been so crucial to land accurate gunfire goes dark. The men aboard the U-405 see the light go out. Hauptmann's surprised. This is their chance to escape.
Torpedoangriff abbrechen! Hart Steuerbord!
But the USS Bori's radar never lost sight of the submarine, and Hutchins' plan has worked.
Enable the searchlight!
The lights come back on, revealing U-405 immediately in front.
Ram it!
Hauptmann sees it coming and orders evasive maneuvers. U-405 makes a nimble turn to sneak past USS Bori's starboard side. But Hutchins won't let it go that easily.
Hard to starboard!
The whole ship trembles as it strains through the maneuver, stern swinging out towards the enemy and bringing depth charges into range.
Fire depth charges!
The canisters fly off the mounts and splash perfectly around the enemy ship. The explosions send U-405 into a tumble. Its hull is now breached beyond repair. There's silence across the water until the Germans fire out flares from their stricken U-boat. It's a signal to surrender. Moments later, 15 survivors and their captain make their way out and board life rafts. USS Bori inches close to the stricken men, seeing what they can do to help in the heaving waves. But a lookout shouts to announce a flare in the distance, shortly followed by an incoming torpedo. They assume it's another German submarine. Hutchins immediately orders Bori to turn the stern towards the incoming torpedo to show a thin profile. But that also sends Bori straight into the German life rafts. The Bori's crew are forced to abandon the German survivors who await rescue. That rescue would never come, and the men of U-405 were all lost to the Atlantic. USS Bori wins the engagement, but is still mortally wounded. The flooding cannot be stopped. Lucas and his men continue operating the engines, even as they have to dive to reach the valves. Eventually, they evacuate through the roof hatch. The crew abandoned ship. Tragically, the sea also claimed 27 of USS Bori's 122 men before rescue ships arrived at the scene. Both Lieutenant Commander Charles Harris Hutchins and Kenneth Miles Lucas survived the war. Hutchins would be awarded the Navy Cross for his actions. It's November the 20th, 1944. Under the waves of the Philippine Sea, an Imperial Japanese Navy I-47 submarine pushes through the dark waters. It's on a deadly mission in carrying a lethal cargo of 4 secret weapons. Inside the I-47, Lieutenant Sekio Nishina stares at his old friend's ashes, bracing himself for what is to come. The captain lets him know he's arrived at the location. He carefully holds a box as he walks to his fate. Nishina climbs inside and takes his spot in the cockpit. Every design choice represents hours of work. The machine that will propel him on a one-way mission is a product of his own making. It's the Kaiten manned torpedo. The Kaitens are on a secret mission to test a stealthy underwater weapon by attempting to sink US Navy ships that are anchored near the Ulithi Atoll. Nishina sets down the urn of his friend and professionally checks over every dial, valve, and lever. He can't help but admire his handiwork. He gets on the phone to communicate with the submarine captain, who tells him that the targets are anchored dead ahead, 4.5 miles away. The Kaitens are released from the mothership of the submarine, each one being steered practically automatically, heading to the bearings that have been set on the rudimentary autopilots. But the speed is undeniable. These are the fastest manned submarines in the world at the time. Each of the Kaitens have a slightly different route. They surface around 1/2 mile from the target and then use their periscopes to get the final bearing. Nishina looks through the periscope, spotting many targets. There, right in front of him, is a beautiful sight. He can see several American ships. They're sitting ducks. He sets his sights on the largest one and powers on. While heading for its target, one of the Kaitens runs aground on a sandbank. A massive explosion goes off.
Hey, did you hear that? We're under attack. I can't see anything.
And the Americans are now warned that something's going on. American sailors rush to the edge of the ships and look out into the distance but can't see anything. Inside his Kaiten, Nishina carefully maneuvers on the shallow waters to prevent getting stuck, lowering his periscope to prevent him from being seen, sailing virtually blind. Another Kaiten is hit, this time by depth charges. The Americans scramble to battle stations but still can't see anything. Nishina extends his periscope and again sees his target and adjusts course. His view is filled with the USS Mississauga, a massive oiler. He turns towards it, aiming square at its center. In the distance, the third chiton gets stuck on torpedo netting, its struggling engine pouring out smoke that alerts the enemy. The American forces spot the periscope of the chiton tangled in the net, and they open fire, tearing the relatively tiny submarine to pieces. Nishina hopes they don't see him. He's so close, he can feel it. The submarine picks up speed. Faster and faster it slips through the water, the target getting closer and closer. He takes what he feels will be his final breath and turns his gaze to see the remains of his friend one last time, and his life flashing before his eyes. In June of 1942, Ensign Nishina was given grave information from senior officers. The hard-fought Battle of Midway was not a draw as had been depicted in the Japanese news, but instead was a complete disaster for Japan. The battle had wiped out 4 out of 6 of Japan's best carriers. Just as tragic was that the majority of Japan's best Navy pilots had also been lost in battle. Any advantage that Japan had held since the start of the war 7 months ago was now lost, and even more alarming was the fact that America's power seemingly grew stronger each and every month. The future looked bleak, and a decisive victory for Japan was seemingly impossible. Desperate times would give birth to desperate measures. A few months later, Nishina enrolls to begin training as a pilot in a midget submarine and makes friends with another pilot, Lieutenant Hiroshi Kuroki. Small and stealthy vessels are meant to approach the enemy and fire torpedoes, slipping away silently. However, these submarines are already pretty much obsolete. American sonar has ensured they're practically undersea coffins, while their hard-to-aim torpedoes mean that even successful infiltrations still result in failure. With the chances of success next to zero, the men consider, why should they get destroyed without even sinking a single ship? With his friend's words, a thought dawns on Nishina. What if they turn the submarines into torpedoes? The pair stare at each other in mutual understanding. The war is going poorly for Japan, and the Americans have many more ships and men. And so the two friends begin to draft sketches long before the infamous Kamikaze have been brought into service. Kuroki and Nishina make a plan to use the same tactic, but under the sea. They submit their proposals, but the officials ignore them. That is until they write them in their own blood to prove their sincerity. Their radical plan to send a Japanese pilot to his guaranteed demise was difficult to stomach by the officials. However, no one could deny its usefulness was obvious. So the chiton is given the go-ahead, but with the condition that the pilot must be given a means of escape. An idea that the two designers soon abandoned as it was too complicated and unreliable to implement. When finally built, their undersea beast is no midget at 14.7 meters long, 1 meter in diameter, and weighing 8 tons. It features just a single periscope, rudimentary controls, and for navigation it has a gyroscope and a clock for timing turns. But it was all to deliver 1.5 tons of explosive to its target. The chiton pilots are sourced from Navy aircraft and officer training. Thousands passionately volunteer, but only a few hundred are selected. The chosen are handed to Kuroki and Nishina, and together they train and test the weapon. There are no pilot's manuals, so it's the teachers' and students' job to test the weapons for flaws and issues. On one training mission, Hiroshi Kuroki was piloting an early version of the chiton off the coast of Otsushima. With the bad weather, Nishina tries desperately to warn his friend and tell him not to go. The weather is poor, but Kuroki insists on moving forward, saying the conditions would be similar to those on combat missions. He dives and pushes on with the training. Kuroki's chiton dives too deep and propels its way towards the sea floor. He wrestles with the controls as the rough seas and currents push him about. But the rough seas are just too much for the chiton. Out of control, and to Hiroshi's horror, the submarine propels itself down and into the ocean floor. Hiroshi tries everything, but it's no use. This sea monster of his own design is now his undersea prison. He silently curses himself for abandoning the design of the escape hatch the Japanese Navy had insisted upon, but he also realizes that the water pressure at this depth would have made it impossible to use. Thinking quickly, he tries to make some noise. Every 5 minutes, he releases air from the compressed air bottles. The intention was that the bubbles would alert the surface vessels of his location. At the surface, the bad weather and low light make this plan futile. Out of options, Kuroki calmly picks up a pen and writes a detailed incident report, insisting that the accident was entirely his fault and that Nishina and the others who had warned him of the bad weather were not responsible. He finishes the letter with these words: "Long live the Emperor. Long live the Empire of Japan. Long live the Imperial Navy." Finally, as is tradition in Japan, he writes his death poem.
国を思い、死ぬに死なれぬマスラオが、ともども呼びつつ、死してゆくら。
He's found 10 hours after the impact, dead from oxygen deprivation. He was just 22 years old. The accident was devastating for Nishina, who looked forward to dying a glorious death alongside his friend. But now, all he could do is press on alone. Eventually, the crews are deemed mission ready, and the first mission is scheduled for November the 20th, 1944. On November the 6th, the men throw a party for the fortunate 12 pilots selected for the first attack. Among them is Nishina. They celebrate with sake and kachikure. Towards the end of the ceremony, they are given swords, and the chosen give speeches. During his speech, Nishina reveals he'll go into battle alongside his fallen friend, Hiroshi Kuroki. He's going to take his ashes on board Kaiten No. 1 and fulfill their promise to each other of attacking enemy ships together. The next morning, the men enter into the 3 large submarines that will ferry them close to battle. Aboard the submariners treat the pilots with the utmost respect. The crew watches on solemnly as the 4 pilots board the 4 craft.
黒木と私は我々が生み出した兵器を最初に実戦で操縦することができて光栄に思います。それも日本と天皇陛下のために。日本国民はあなたの名誉ある犠牲を忘れません。
The crew of I-47 present their 4 Kaiten pilots with a painting made by one of the crew members of a Kaiten destroying an American ship. It is to be gifted to the Emperor. The 4 pilots each enter a submarine of their own, and the mission is on. Moments later, the latches release and the phone line severs. Nishina quickly takes the helm of the machine, and it's away. Nishina hears explosions underwater and realizes that his friends have got into trouble. He rises towards the surface and speeds forward. What he doesn't know, he's now the only Kaiten remaining, Japan's last hope for a victory on this day. The Americans all look out intently in search of periscopes, but Nishina is already on his final approach to the ship, with his periscope down. He's at full speed now, at 30 knots or 34 miles an hour. But he hardly notices the noise of the engine and the rushing of the water, and the sound fades into the distance as he considers his fate.
やり遂げたぞ。
Nishina closes his eyes. The warhead of his Kaiten touches the USS Mississauga's hull. The shock of the impact sets off the explosive charge. A huge explosion rips the massive oiler in 2, splitting open its tanks and triggering a gigantic fire that illuminates the anchorage. Secondary explosions rock the ship as its many gas tanks burst into bright orange fireballs. The ship burns out of control and sinks, claiming the lives the 63 men. Watching the Kaiten's explosions in the distance, the submarine crew believe that all 4 were successful and report a much higher success rate than happened in reality. This false report inspires the Japanese to try more Kaiten missions, but very few are successful. In total, 106 young men sacrificed their lives piloting these horrific machines. According to United States sources, only 3 ever hit their targets, claiming the lives of 187 Americans. The pilots who volunteered to sacrifice everything for their homeland are remembered in the Kaiten Memorial Museum, located in the buildings on the island of Otsushima, where the men trained for their last mission. It's the afternoon of June the 24th, 1944, and Flight Lieutenant David Pop Hornell pilots his Catalina flying boat. He's on an anti-submarine patrol over the rough Norwegian seas when over the intercom, the port gunner asks,
"Hey, you seeing what I see on the port side?"
He checks to his left, and sure enough, in the distance, there's the distinct form of a U-boat floating in the sea.
I sure do.
Hornell activates the action station's alarm, and the flying boat turns towards the enemy with 4 depth charges at the ready. Below, spotters in the German U-boat 1225 see the incoming aircraft and sound the alarm. The submarine turns in evasive maneuvers as twin 20mm cannons and a single 37mm flak cannon are turned towards the Catalina. The Catalina is rocked by 37mm flak. The plane's already shuddering under hits on the fuselage.
Cole, radio the base. Keep them updated. Copy that.
Hornell orders the radio operator, Sidney Cole, to tell the base their location and situation. But before Cole has a chance to send the first message, a flak shell punctures the radio compartment. Cole groans and puts pressure on his wound, but doesn't report it. Instead, he pushes through the pain and keys the transmission. Little does he know that the radio equipment has been damaged by the German fire. Hornell dives towards the target, unaware that none of their transmissions are being sent. As they get closer, 20mm cannons join the fray, and tracers zip all around. The impacts get ever more frequent, punching holes in the aircraft's thin skin.
Hold on.
The crew feel a violent shake and are horrified to see pieces of the right wing being torn off. Flak bursts by the right engine, and it starts shaking violently. Hornell fights with the aircraft as it starts to drift off course, the mounting damage making it ever harder to steer. At the nose of the aircraft, the front gunner opens fire at the U-boat with his twin 303 Brownings. Bullets rain around Sauerberg. The Catalina's fire zeroes in on the conning tower as they get closer. Sauerberg's men are struck, and the guns go silent.
Ihr Männer, an die Geschütze oder wir sind alle tot!
But the incoming fire is too accurate. The Germans can't move as the Catalina's machine guns rip into the conning tower. But then, one of the Catalina's guns jams. The U-boat commander, hearing the strike slow, seizes the opportunity.
Geschütze, sofort!
The crew jump into position and they open fire on the incoming Catalina. Hornell's blood runs cold as he sees once more a wall of tracers coming up at them. The Catalina is hit again with German fire ripping through the wings and fuselage. A glow comes from above, and Hornell looks up to see the damaged engine with flames gushing out of its cowling.
Starboard engine on fire. Shutting it down.
The second pilot shuts off the engine, but it doesn't stop the fuel leak. The ball of fire grows as a plane barrels towards the enemy submarine. Sauerberg is staring at a rapidly approaching ball of fire and orders evasive maneuvers.
Voll nach Backbord!
Above, Hornell is fully committed. Seeing the submarine turn left, he makes an adjustment at the last possible moment. And then he releases the depth charges. Below, Sauerberg watches the Catalina roar overhead as it drops its payload.
Gott im Himmel.
The depth charges splash perfectly around the submarine.
It's ahead. It's ahead.
The aircraft shakes even more violently. Hornell looks up at the flaming engine spinning in the wind. He sees it shake its own mounts apart. The rivets and bolts come undone. The fuel and parts of the engine rip away from the wing. Hornell knows they're not going to make it home.
We're going down. Brace yourselves, men!
The men all hold on, except Cole, who frantically signals SOS messages as Hornell prepares to land. The sea below is rough, but they've no other choice. Hornell turns his Catalina into the wind and prepares for landing. The float's lower, and the remaining engine is brought to idle. The waves only appear to get bigger as the plane gets closer to the surface.
Brace for impact!
Cole keeps keying SOS until the last possible moment, when he stops and braces for impact. The Catalina hits the first wave, but there's a strong headwind. The force bounces the airplane and it surges 150 feet back up into the air. Hornell wrestles with the controls, and in a split second, he aligns the Catalina for a second impact. They slam into the next wave, and the plane once again launches, reaching 50 feet before plunging back down towards the water. The still burning Catalina bursts through multiple waves before finally coming to a rest.
Get out!
Hornell urges on his men as he knows the Catalina can explode at any second. Flight engineer Donald Scott inflates a dinghy out of the left blister, while fellow engineer Fernand Laurent inflates one from the right.
You all get on board! I'll push it!
Hornell and some of the men jump into the freezing cold water to push the dinghy away. Cole bundles onto the dinghy and makes sure to secure the survival rations as the men start pushing. But then, he remembers the radio.
Wait, the radio!
Hornell barely has time to understand what Cole has just said before Cole starts swimming back towards the Catalina.
What are you doing?
We need the radio. They won't find us.
Don't! It's too late!
Hornell is right. The men watch painfully as the Catalina is engulfed in flames and sinks under the waves. They begin helping one another onto the dinghy. The inside of the dinghy is already beginning to flood as the men try to board. Hornell uses a helmet to throw water overboard, but then there's a cry.
We're missing someone.
Hornell's filled with dread and immediately gets to the edge and counts the heads. There's only 7. There's meant to be 8.
It's Laurent!
Fighting down panic, Hornell scours the rolling waves for his missing man. They see nothing as the dinghy rises and falls in the heavy waves. They catch a glimpse of a second dinghy that's also cresting a wave in the distance.
There he is!
They push furiously through the swell, rushing to catch up with their friend. The men on the dinghy direct as they see their friend also paddling towards them. But then they crest another wave and see Laurent's dinghy empty.
Go faster!
They redouble their efforts and reach Laurent, who's managed to struggle back onto his dinghy. The relief of having 2 dinghies is palpable, and 2 of the crew move to get onto Laurent's dinghy. But then, Laurent's dinghy explodes and drops the men into the ice-cold sea water. They all start to pile onto the remaining dinghy, but they can't fit. Hornell volunteers to stay in the freezing water with 2 more men.
Hang on. We sent those distress calls. Rescue will be here soon.
But he doesn't know that none of them were sent. For 3 hours, Hornell organizes a rotation, swapping who waits in the water, hoping to delay hypothermia. Hornell assigns himself to stay in the freezing water the longest, but it's unbearable. His strength is fading.
We have to figure out how to get everyone aboard.
Look, there!
An aircraft is spotted in the sky. It's another Catalina.
Get the flare gun!
The flare fires off into the sky, lingering in the air for a minute before falling into the sea. But the Catalina keeps on its path.
Another!
They send out a second flare, and yet again, the aircraft doesn't react.
Come on! Come on! Another!
A third flare is shot into the air. Seconds drag on. And finally,
They saw us!
the Catalina turns towards them.
We have survived its drift. 63 degrees north, 0 degrees, 30 minutes west. Unable to land due to bad weather. We need a boat.
Over 100 miles away in the Shetland Islands, rescue boat HSL 2507 is deployed. The Catalina stays circling over the stranded men, and they signal in Morse code. High-speed launch on the way, help coming. Then sometimes later it signals, U-boat killed. The men cheer. They might just make it out of this. Every wave is torture, and they're having trouble holding on. A wave lifts up their dinghy and throws the entire crew overboard. Hornell emerges from the water, disoriented. The dinghy's getting pushed by the wind, and his men lay scattered around him. He clings to the lifeboat, counting heads.
Everyone's here?
They struggle to turn it over in heavy waves, and one by one, they help each other climb aboard and rebuild their barely stable setup. Water starts to fill the dinghy, and without the bucket and their strength fading, the small dinghy floats lower and lower, partially submerging some of the men in the freezing sea. The situation is desperate. Hornell's vision starts to blur. The men huddle in search of any warmth. Laurent starts to go delirious.
Laurent? Stay awake, please. Laurent!
Hornell and his men try to talk with him to keep him focused. But it's no use. He's gone. The men are devastated. Hornell makes a difficult decision to push Laurent's body overboard. Up above, the Catalina's running out of fuel. There's no choice. The crew radios the men's position one last time and turns for home. The men stifle back tears as they watch their hope fly away. They float alone in the sea. But then they see something in the sky. It's a huge aircraft. The men perk up. They start waving their hands and they see a big bomber turn towards them. It drops something from its belly. The men watch. It's a wooden boat. But the wind is strong and the boat gets carried away, flying off until it disappears from sight behind a wave. They bob up and down in the waves and see it floating 500 yards away.
Let's swim. We can make it.
No! It's too
Despite being completely blind from the salt water and having no idea where the boat is, Hornell drags himself towards the water. The men swim after him, reaching out, grabbing his arms, trying to hold him back. Hornell pleads, but his men know it's no use, and they watch their lifeboat float away. A spotlight appears over the waves, illuminating the men. The rescue boat has finally arrived.
Contact. We found them.
After 21 long hours, the survivors of the Catalina are pulled from the sea. Laying on the dinghy, Hornell looks up, staring through his blurred eyes at the scene of his men being lifted out of the water. A sense of accomplishment washes over him, and with the last of his strength, he musters the smallest of smiles. His eyes close, never to open again. The sailors on the rescue boat attempt to revive him for 4 hours, but it's no use. Thanks to Hornell, 5 survivors would all make a full recovery and survive the war. David Ernest Hornell was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, and it was received by his wife. It's the 5th of March 1944, and in a cramped U-boat, Captain Gerhard Seehausen is hunting his prey.
Feuer!
The cargo ship erupts in a ball of flame. It's a hit.
Treffer besteht.
This is the 4th ship they've sunk on this sortie. The submarine is the U-66, one of the most successful U-boats of the war. It has taken part in 4 wolf packs, claiming 36 victims and sending over 200,000 tons worth of ships and cargo to the bottom of the sea. The Germans, buoyed by their success, plan their next hunting ground.
Ich denke, wir sollten hier jagen.
Hundreds of miles away, on the US destroyer Escort, the USS Buckley, Lieutenant Commander Brent Abel receives a transmission.
Sir, orders from Block Island. U-boat attack reported at 03.56 north, 07.36 east. Task group is ordered to sweep the area.
Reply, we copy. Engines full steam ahead. Maintain heading 150.
Abel and his ship forms part of a U-boat hunting party, and they've been given a target. After months at sea, the German supplies are getting low, and they surface at an agreed rendezvous point west of Africa. Captain Seehausen waits impatiently at the conning tower.
Immer noch nichts?
Nichts aus dem Ausguck, Sir.
Sie sind zu spät.
U-66 now finds itself alone, low on fuel and torpedoes, and on the run from the skies and the seas, which are swarming with American patrols. They sail in circles waiting for an arranged resupply, but it's nowhere to be seen. As the lookout fruitlessly scans the horizon one more time, something unexpected reaches his ears. Looking up, he spots the last thing they want to see.
Achtung, Jabus! Männer auf Gefechtsstation! Fertig machen zum Angriff!
Up in the distance, inside an American TBM-1C bomber, Lieutenant Jimmy J. Salas scans the waters. A dark outline sits in the waves. It's completely unrecognizable, but Salas knows the region. That's no island.
That's a submarine.
Nicht schießen! Vielleicht hat uns nicht gesehen. Es hat uns gesehen! Halt! Es gibt keinen Angriff. Warten Sie ab! Sollen wir untertauchen? Vielleicht hat uns entdeckt.
Seehausen is torn. Caution would indicate them to submerge and escape, but they don't have many days of diesel left, and their diving equipment needs spare parts. If they miss this resupply, there's no guarantee they can make it home.
Müssen an der Oberfläche bleiben und nach dem Versorgungsschiff Ausschau halten. Das ist kritisch.
In the sky, Sellers flies away, broadcasting every detail of the submarine. The message is received on the USS Buckley just 20 miles away.
They found it. Scout describes it sailing in circles, perhaps waiting for that other sub our boys sank the other day.
Commander Brent Abel grins at the news.
Prepare for battle. Engines to flank speed. Heading 350. Let's make all haste.
Just 40 minutes later, the USS Buckley approaches its target, guided along by Sellers in the sky.
Anything on the radar?
Negative, sir.
They should be here somewhere.
Detection bearing 335, 14,000 yards.
Abel scours the waves, but sees nothing but darkness. If he can't find it, how will his gunners hit the damn thing? He lowers his binoculars and looks west. The moon is big and low over the horizon, casting a long and beautiful reflection across the waves. He gets an idea.
Heading 340. Let's put that sub to our west.
On the German U-boat, lookouts finally notice the ship in the distance.
Schiff südwärts! Welcher Art? Unbekannt. Zu dunkel.
Sollen wir sie grüßen?
Negativ. Wir sind nicht in der Lage zu kämpfen, wenn es Amerikaner sind. Volle Alarmbereitschaft und Tarnung aufrechthalten. Funkstille. Nur passives Sonar.
The two vessels continue to get closer. Abel watches the sea throughout, finally managing to barely spot the shape of the submarine in the waves. But still, he holds fire. Meanwhile, aboard the U-66, they watch the unknown ship getting ever closer.
Die müssen uns schon gesehen haben. Abfeuern von Aufklärungsraketen.
Keine Antwort, Sir.
Chills travel down the spine of everyone gathered. It's clear now, they're not friendly.
Kurs auf 010. Heck-Torpedos bereit.
Ja, Sir.
Können wir untertauchen?
Mit unseren klebrigen Ventilen würde das 15 Minuten dauern.
Dann vergessen Sie's. Lassen Sie die Männer bei den Waffen.
It's a disaster, but they're determined to fight. Alarms blare within the U-boat. Deep within the vessel, 21-inch torpedoes are locked and loaded.
Feuer!
Back at USS Buckley, Commander Abel finally sees his elusive prey enter the moon's reflection. The invisible ghost is now clear as day.
Heading 260. Get the range.
Yes, sir.
The helmsman turns hard to port, aiming the destroyer straight towards the enemy. But little does anyone on the bridge know that outside, a torpedo sails right by, where the ship would have been if it hadn't changed course.
Torpedo verfehlt.
Feuer aus allen Rohren!
Muzzle flashes shine from the enemy submarine. Tracers fly towards the American ship. Without skipping a beat, Commander Abel gives the order
Open fire!
to unleash their own guns. 20mm, 40mm, and 3-inch guns open fire simultaneously, launching a storm of lead at the Germans. With the moon and preparation on their side, their accuracy is on point. The rounds slam straight onto U-66's deck. Seehausen's post is rocked by heavy fire, but the armor holds.
Wir sind getroffen! Geben Sie mir einen Schadensbericht und schießen Sie weiter!
In the air, Salah's radios updates of the battle to the battle group.
Buckley has opened fire! Sub is returning fire! Boy, I have never before seen such concentration! Buckley is cutting hell out of the conning tower!
The German gunners brave the incoming shells, holding position and fighting back with all they have. But in the dark and the chaos, they aim far too high, their courage reaping no rewards. One by one, they fall, and the guns lay quiet. Looking on with his binoculars, Commander Abel sees the submarine about to leave the moon's reflection.
Check fire, check fire. Don't waste ammunition while we can't see. Heading 180.
The shelling pauses at a good time for U-66. Injured men retreat into the hatches and are replaced by fresh crew. This is their chance.
Feuer!
AA guns open up on the destroyer escort, and shells streak across the sky. The U-boat gunners try to adjust low, but estimating the range of a dark object on a dark background proves next to impossible. The American storm of fire resumes, in full force, the whole broadside of the destroyer unleashing its many guns upon the submarine. The U-boat gun crews bravely continue to fire, despite completely lacking protection, loading and firing as bullets crash all around them. The chaos becomes background noise as they work. One of their rounds punches through the Buckley smokestack. But Buckley's weapons pummel the enemy into submission, the forecastle getting shredded. All throughout, Seehausen desperately calls evasive maneuvers. The sub constantly turns left and right, trying to dodge the brutal enemy fire. But in the process, they only slip further into Buckley's grasp. In U-66's conning tower, Captain Seehausen orders to turn around to face the enemy.
Kurs 210. Letzten Torpedo abfeuern.
The torpedo launches out the tube, carrying with it the German crew's last hope. Commander Abel watches the submarine maneuver, unsure of his enemy's plan. He shadows his every turn as his men continue to fire with exceptional marksmanship, scoring hit after hit. Then his sonar officer calls.
Torpedo, starboard bow! Rudder full starboard!
USS Buckley turns hard to the right, the crew on deck watching the ominous trail of bubbles coming closer. At warship speeds, the maneuver feels eternal, but they manage to escape, the torpedo sailing harmlessly by.
Torpedo verfehlt.
It's devastating news. Their last chance is gone. Defenseless, Seehausen sees no option but to make the dreaded order.
Runter vom Schiff.
Ja, Sir.
Kurs 030. Feindlichem Feuer ausweichen, solange es geht.
A couple of German sailors rush out of the hatches and dive into the sea, escaping the barrage of shells. But in the dark, Abel doesn't notice and they continue mercilessly shelling the submarine. The USS Buckley maneuvers to sail alongside the enemy as their gunners bracket it with endless gunfire. The sub's guns have long gone quiet, but it still sails, and as far as Abel knows, it's still trying to fight the torpedoes. But he's to have none of it. Helmsman yanks on the wheel, turning the American destroyer right towards the U-boat. On board the U-boat, the escaping crew is shocked to see 1,400 tons of ship barreling towards them.
Ausweichmanöver! Alles nach Steuerbord!
But it's too late. The destroyer slams into the submarine and leaning against it. Soon after, Germans emerge out of the hatches, originally intending to abandon ship as ordered. They're shocked to find Buckley on their submarine. Without orders or plan, over a dozen Germans take out their personal weapons and decide to fire upon the Buckley's crew. Abel immediately realizes the risk they put themselves into and issues an order not heard in over a century.
Stand by to repel boarders!
Moments later, Germans start making the jump onto Buckley's deck. The Americans immediately respond with their own sidearms, opening fire on the mass of climbing Germans. Over a dozen Germans make it over the railing, and a fistfight breaks out on deck. Everything from spent casings to the officers' hot coffee become weapons, striking enemy sailors in the head and causing them to fall back. It's chaos. Aware of the devolving situation, Commander Abel does the only thing he can. USS Buckley starts sliding backwards across the submarine's hull, making an infernal noise. Germans cling onto the side of Buckley and are forced to choose between dropping back onto the U-66 or being abandoned aboard the enemy's ship. An unknown sailor brings grenades and throws them at the sub.
Mein Gott.
Moments later, a huge explosion rises from the sea, and everything falls silent. USS Buckley circled the area for hours and picked up 36 survivors from the U-boat's 62-man crew, most of them having come out during the fight. USS Buckley itself didn't lose a single man, and Commander Abel would be awarded the Navy Cross for his leadership. He survived the war. Captain Gerhard Seehausen was never found and went down with his ship. He was just 26 years old. It's the night of September the 12th, 1942, in the South Atlantic Ocean, and the German submarine U-156 has been stalking a British armed merchant cruiser for hours. The U-boat has surfaced so it can keep up with its target, and Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartenstein keeps his distance to avoid detection. He watches through his periscope as the target chugs along. The British are completely unaware of the danger closing in, and as dusk falls, some cabins ignore the strict blackout order. Each glowing window helps Hartenstein to line up his shot. An alarm sounds across the submarine as torpedoes are prepared for launch. A 22-foot-long torpedo rushes out of the tube and races toward its target. Calling another shot, Hartenstein launches a second torpedo at the British ship. He counts down the seconds as the torpedoes race towards the starboard side of the ship. Watching through the scope, he can see a massive spurt of water emerge as the first torpedo strikes the British merchant cruiser right in the center. Water rises high into the air and then falls away, revealing a massive gaping hole in the hull. Just moments later, a second torpedo slams into the vessel, striking closer to the bow and shaking the entire ship. Hartenstein watches with satisfaction through his spyglass as the British ship begins keeling over to starboard. As he watches, he sees survivors dive from the stricken ship into the sea. On board U-156, the radio operator calls out. He's intercepted a distress signal from the cruiser.
Achtung, Achtung! Das versenkte Schiff ist die Laconia. 19.695 Tonnen.
A cheer goes up among the men. It's a massive prize. But with a distress signal sent out, it's only a matter of time before Allied air and naval vessels close in. But Hartenstein wants to try and capture the Laconia's captain. The cold night air hits him as Hartenstein emerges from his hatch and stands on the bridge. All the while, he's looking for any sign of the enemy captain as he closes in on the sinking British giant. The stricken ship is listing hard to starboard, and able seaman Jim McLaughlin is stranded and grasping a hold of the railings. He watches as all around him is a scene of total chaos and panic. The ship is packed with military and civilian passengers. Men, women and children rush to the lifeboats as they attempt to escape the sinking Laconia. Jim looks down over the port side. His best chance is to jump into the water from the high side. But he just can't face the drop. So he slides down the deck towards the starboard side. Lowering himself into the water and swimming as fast as he can away from the sinking ship and out into the black expanse of ocean, picking his way through a field of debris and panicking survivors. He's elated to spot a floating wooden raft up ahead. Already sheltering on the raft is his friend, Davy Jones.
Bloody hell, Jim. Give me a hand.
Davy pulls Jim up onto the raft. Shivering, the men are dejected as they watch the Laconia's stern rise up and its propellers are lifted high into the air. Meanwhile, half a mile away in the U-boat, Hartenstein scans the ocean. The sea is filled with overcrowded lifeboats, and even more people clinging to the sides. Shouts and cries echo through the dark. They spot two men clinging to a crate who are shouting for help. But they're not shouting in English. It sounds like Italian. Hartenstein is shocked to hear Italian voices. What are they doing on a British vessel? Sailors rush down to the bow and drag the two men from the water. They're both shaking with cold and fear. They're brought in front of Hartenstein, and both of them plead with the captain.
Italiani, prigionieri.
A chill runs through Hartenstein's blood. The ship he's hit is full of Italian prisoners, his own allies. More and more men paddle their way to the U-boat, desperate to reach salvation. The submarine crew pull up an Italian corporal who can speak some German. Finally, Hartenstein learns the truth. The corporal tells him there are at least 1,500 Italian prisoners of war on board the Laconia, along with hundreds of British women and children.
My God.
Every hour Hartenstein stays in the area puts his U-boat and the lives of his men at risk. His orders are to get out of the danger zone as quickly as possible. But this captain feels he has a duty to his allies and to the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Jim and Davy float through the night on their flimsy raft. As the morning sun rises and beats down on them, it mercilessly bakes their salt-covered skin. Jim dangles one leg into the sea, desperate for relief. Then suddenly, he feels a sharp pain tearing through his calf. He hauls his leg back onto the raft. Blood wells from deep puncture wounds as a long, silver shape slips away beneath the surface. A giant barracuda glides below them, just out of reach. Then another shape appears, and another, circling the little raft. Jim pulls his injured leg tight against his chest. It's swelling now, throbbing with every heartbeat. He stares up at the empty sky. No ships, no planes, no sign that anyone even knows they're here. But then, Jim hears the throbbing of an engine in the distance. He squints against the glare, and his eyes pick up the sight of a German submarine approaching. The pair watch anxiously as German sailors climb out of the tower and fan out across the deck. Jim thinks that the Germans are there to finish them off. One of the sailors gets closer to the bow, closing in on the machine gun. Jim's heart beats rapidly as he prepares for the end. But the sailor doesn't reach for the machine gun. Instead, he curls a long rope and hurls it towards Jim and Davy.
Catch, Engländer!
Hartenstein has received permission to conduct a rescue, and he thinks his enemies deserve to live just as much as his allies. The German sailors drag the little raft alongside their submarine and haul the two Brits on deck. Jim flops down, exhausted. Looking up into the face of his German savior, he's surprised to see a smiling face peering down at him.
Ah, Royal Navy. Well, we couldn't just leave you on the water.
Jim's pulled to his feet by the German sailors and helped across the deck for medical attention. He's the first of dozens of Allied servicemen who come aboard U-156. The submarine stays at the scene as the days pass, and Hartenstein keeps filling his boat up with survivors, Italian prisoners, British and Polish troops, and civilians. The compartments and deck are soon packed to the limits, but Hartenstein still ignores the danger. He doesn't plan to leave people stranded in the ocean. Ordering the crew to lash 4 lifeboats to his U-boat gives extra space, but it brings the sub down to walking pace and makes them a sitting duck for attacks. Hartenstein's only protection is a repeated plea to enemy forces, which the radio operator sends out across all open channels. If any ship will assist the shipwrecked Laconia crew, I will not attack her, provided I am not attacked by ship or air force. Even with this radio message, he feels danger is still around. Out on the deck, a German sailor spots something in the distance.
Flugzeug tief an Steuerbord!
An unknown aircraft comes in close and starts circling around the submarine. It's near enough that the crew can see a White Star roundel of the United States. The aircraft is a B-24 Liberator belonging to the US Army Air Force. At the controls is Lieutenant James D. Harden, and he's searching the area for Laconia survivors. He gets on the radio.
Got a submarine down here. Heading down to investigate.
At an altitude of just 250 feet, Hardin can clearly see the deck is packed with passengers, and the U-boat is dragging lifeboats.
Hiss die rote Kreuzflagge.
The crew rush out to the bow and quickly fix an enormous Red Cross flag over the 105mm deck gun.
Jetzt drunter aufs Deck.
U-156 is totally exposed. All their lives are in the pilot's hands. The Liberator continues circling, doesn't attack. Hartenstein breathes a sigh of relief. He orders a captured RAF officer up onto the deck, and together they send a signal using an Aldis lamp. RAF officer speaking from German submarine. Laconia survivors on board. Soldiers, civilians, women, children. Up in the aircraft, Hardin and his crew are confused. They've never been properly trained to read Morse code signals flashed by a lamp, and the only thing they can make out from the signal is the word German. They fly back towards their base to get into radio range with their commanders at the top secret Wide Awake airfield on nearby Ascension Island. He makes contact with his captain, Robert Richardson. Hardin tries to explain the situation over the radio, but he's not really sure what he's seeing.
What are your orders, sir?
This has got to be some kind of German trick.
But they're flying the Red Cross.
Hardin waits in silence while Richardson makes a decision. And he thinks about the risk of an enemy submarine finding the base.
Sink the sub at once.
Yes, sir.
Hardin takes the Liberator around and heads back towards U-156. He pushes forward on the control column and brings the plane down to a low level and begins his attack run. The submarine and the lifeboats get closer and closer through the cockpit glass. The Liberator roars towards U-156. It's so low that it's almost skimming the surface of the waves. On the deck, there's panic as the aircraft closes in. The soldiers jump up and wave their arms desperately above their heads, trying to call off the attack. But it's no use. Hardin keeps coming.
Runter!
The Liberator comes screaming overhead, and bombs come crashing down towards the submarine. The bombs splash into the water short of the U-boat, sending up huge plumes of spray and drenching the crowded deck. The Liberator pulls up and soars away from the U-boat. Hartenstein crouches by the conning tower as he sees a Liberator come round for another attack run. The only way to save his crew is to take the U-boat down into a crash dive. But he can't do this while carrying hundreds of refugees. It's an agonizing moment, but he knows he has to give the order.
Rettungsboote kappen!
One of his sailors runs to the rear and starts chopping through the ropes with an axe. A blade comes slicing down, severing the connection with one of the lifeboats. 2 more to go. The sailor dashes over and smashes down on another rope. He cuts halfway through, but the rope is too thick. Raising the axe high, he goes to swing again. But it's not quick enough. The Liberator is already screaming in for another attack run. Hartenstein throws himself onto the deck as another bomb comes whistling down from the aircraft. This time, it's a hit. A massive, deafening explosion tears one of the lifeboats to pieces, killing several men instantly. Splinters of wood and a cloud of shrapnel fly up into the air, and Hartenstein stares in horror at the destruction. He sees the devastation as the plane comes round for another attack. The Liberator roars towards the scene and releases another bomb. The bomb lunges into the sea and detonates directly under the submarine. The blast lifts U-156 up and out of the water and throws the men on deck off their feet. Hardin watches from the cockpit as the U-boat wallows and thrashes in the water. He's got the kill, but he can't shake the feeling that he's doing something that isn't right.
U-boat sinking. Return to base.
On board the submarine, Hartenstein rushes down the ladder and enters the control room.
Schadensbericht. Wir haben Wassereinbruch. Die Batterien sind undicht.
Hartenstein has no choice. If he wants to escape any further attack, he has to take his boat down to safety.
Raus, raus, alle raus!
It's total mayhem as the survivors dive off the deck and splash down into the water. Struggling against waves, Jim swims for his life. He battles the current and finally he's pulled up onto a lifeboat. The massive shape of the U-boat pulls alongside them. Captain Hartenstein leans down from the conning tower and shouts over the mayhem.
Set your course north, northeast. The coast of Africa is 700 miles away. I wish you good luck.
He salutes the survivors and rushes back inside his submarine. Jim watches as U-156 sails away and disappears under the waves. He and the others in the lifeboat are now alone, far from land. It took the survivors 24 days to get to land. Low on food and water, and with a sea full of predators, their numbers fell every night, but finally, they arrived in Liberia. Altogether, less than half of the roughly 2,800 people on board the Laconia survived the sinking. Captain Werner Hartenstein was killed a year later during a U-boat patrol in May 1943. In response to the American attack on U-156, Admiral Karl Dönitz issued the Laconia Order, which forbade German U-boats from making any attempt to rescue survivors in the future. It's the night of August 27th, 1942. In the Caribbean Sea, the German submarine U-94 has slipped inside a screen of warships protecting a convoy of Allied merchant ships and oil tankers. The U-boat's running on the surface, and Captain Otto Itis is ready to strike a large Canadian corvette when he hears a shout from the lookout.
Feindliches Patrouillenflugzeug im Anflug!
Verdammt, abtauchen! Alarm-Tauchmanöver, sofort!
The lookout scrambles down the conning tower and slams the top hatch shut.
Klar!
Tanks fluten!
The helmsman throws the controls forward, and the submarine's tanks fill with water as U-94 plunges down into the deep.
10 Meter. 20 Meter.
Los, schneller!
But it's not enough. The US Navy PBY Catalina has zeroed in on their position, and it drops 4 650-pound depth charges. The charges sink down into the water and explode around U-94. Inside, the submarine rocks with every blast. The helmsman fights with the controls. The boat starts to angle downwards, but then stops.
Sie will nicht runter, Herr Kaloy.
The depth charges have torn off the bow hydroplanes. Without these control surfaces, U-94 can't get to full depth. Up above, the Catalina circles. It's used up all its depth charges. All it can do now is mark the location and call for reinforcements. The PBY drops a flare on the submarine's last known position. Then it turns and flashes a Morse code signal to the convoy escorts. The nearest ship is the Canadian corvette HMCS Oakville under the command of Captain Clarence King.
Submarine spotted. Crew to action stations.
Alarms ring out over the ship as Sub-Lieutenant Hal Lawrence rushes along the deck to his station, wearing nothing but his tropical shorts. In the rush, he hasn't had time to dress properly, yet still takes up his position as Chief Sonar Officer.
Lawrence, get a fix on their position.
Aye, aye, sir.
Lawrence hunches over the system, straining through the headphones. The sonar system pulses out through the ocean ahead of Oakville.
Contact. Dead ahead.
Down below, the crew of U-94 hear every ping as it bounces off the hull of their boat. To them, it sounds like someone's flinging handfuls of gravel at the metal shell of the submarine. The German sailors stay as quiet as they possibly can, even as Ites throws them into evasive maneuvers.
Ruder Steuerbord.
Lawrence keeps the beam trained, straining his ears on the sonar system. They're closing in. Then the headphones go silent.
We're almost on top of her.
King gives the order to attack.
Get the charges away.
Captain Itis knows exactly what's coming.
Festhalten. Wasserbomben voraus.
Sailors at the stern heave the heavy canisters into position on the racks. Safety pins are yanked free, and one by one the heavy canisters rumble down over the rack, and they tumble into the sea. Oakville clears the scene. Then, the ocean erupts with a chain of mighty explosions, sending towering columns of water rising high behind the corvette. U-94 shudders under the concussions. There's a sound of rivets popping, and water rushes into the compartments.
Schadensmeldung, sofort!
Herr Kaloy, Wassereinbruch.
Itis knows that they're dead if they stay below. Their chances are only slightly better on the surface, but at least they might live. Reluctantly, he gives the order.
Auftauchen. Wir kämpfen an der Oberfläche.
Water blasts out from U-94's tanks, and the boat surges upwards. The German sailors ready themselves on the ladders, waiting to jump out of the hatches and man the guns. Over on Oakville, the crew scan the sea with their binoculars. Then they see it. The U-boat erupts from the depths and settles in full view of the Canadians.
Submarine, 100 yards to starboard.
At this range, King's only got seconds to react.
Full ahead. Ram it!
The helmsman adjusts course and Oakville steams forward, aiming directly at the long grey form. As the Germans open the hatches, they immediately see the awesome sight of the Oakville at full speed, ready to ram the Germans.
Mein Gott, die rammen uns. Alle festhalten!
Both crews brace for impact. Oakville slams into U-94's hull, but it's only a glancing blow. Inside the U-boat, the crew are rocked as they get thrown sideways. At the same time, the Corvette shudders with impact and gets smacked off course.
Bring us alongside. Man the guns.
The helmsman swings the ship around in a wide turn, and Oakville heels over with the strain and brings her broadside in line with U-94. Canadian sailors sprint across the deck and take up their positions, loading machine guns and aiming down the sights.
Open fire!
Oakville's 4-inch gun opens up first, and flames burst from its muzzle as the shell smashes into the U-boat's conning tower. Ites needs to respond.
Besetzt das Deckgeschütz!
The two men clamber out and head towards the bow of the submarine and climb up the ladder. Staying low, they get into the deck and dash towards the 88mm deck gun.
Spray that 88!
Machine guns chatter as tracers rake the U-boat's deck and sparks explode across the gun shield. The Germans dive back down the hatch. Behind them, the 88mm hangs twisted and useless. Another hatch slams open just after the conning tower. A crewman lunges for the 20mm anti-aircraft gun. He barely clears the hatch before bullets rip through the mount. The gun jerks violently and it's torn to pieces. Oakville's 4-inch gun fires again, slamming into the conning tower and smashing through the metal skin of the submarine. The crew reload and make ready to fire again, but the gun jams.
Misfire!
King's jaw tightens.
Rim her again!
Oakville comes around and heads for the U-94 once more. The bow smashes through the churning water as the helmsman fights the waves and lines up his target.
Hold us steady.
King watches the submarine growing larger and larger as Oakville closes in on its dark form. Down on the German vessel, sailors on the bridge hold on tight to the railings as they prepare for impact. But the Corvette slices past at arm's length, missing the conning tower by a little more than feet. The sailors fire their rifles and pistols across the gap, sending bullets snapping across Oakville's deck. The Canadians fire back with their own weapons. Some even hurl whatever objects they can find, sending empty Coke bottles shattering onto the U-boat's bridge. Oakville passes beyond U-94's bow and starts coming round again for another attack. Captain Ites knows that he's running out of options. His only chance is to make a break for it.
Hart Steuerbord. Volle Kraft voraus.
The U-boat's engines strain, but the damaged U-boat can't possibly outrun Oakville.
Prepare to ram!
This time, Oakville smashes directly into the bow of the U-boat. It's a fatal hit. The submarine's motors and screws come to a juddering halt. Ites knows it's all over. All he can do now is prevent his valuable U-boat from falling into enemy hands.
Raus! Raus! Boote versenken!
Sailors open the vents and water starts pouring into the compartments. Up on Oakville's bridge, King looks down at the submarine wallowing helplessly in the ocean. It's a golden opportunity to capture an intact U-boat. Someone needs to get in there and close those valves.
Lawrence, get your team ready to board.
Aye, aye, sir.
Lawrence dashes down to the boarding locker to gear up for battle. He and his 12-man team load themselves up, each taking a .45 revolver, hand grenades, and flashlights. Like Lawrence, they're all barefoot and wearing only their shorts. They dash down to the deck and gather at the bow, right next to the 4-inch gun. They peer over the rail as Oakville inches closer and closer to the stricken U-boat.
Prepare to jump!
But then, there's a catastrophic miscommunication. For some reason, the gunners decide that now is a good time to test the 4-inch gun. Lawrence sees the barrel moving around to a firing position and shouts a warning.
Get down!
But it's too late. An enormous blast erupts from the muzzle just a few yards from his boarding party. The pressure throws Lawrence to the floor, and he blacks out before he hits the deck.
Lawrence! Lawrence! Wake up, man!
Lawrence strains his eyes open and peers to find his number 2 petty officer, Art Powell, slapping his face. Powell helps him to his feet.
All right, boys. Let's do this.
Lawrence leaps over the railing down to the deck of U-94, 8 feet below. Landing on the deck, he feels a snapping sensation. He looks down and sees that his shorts are dangling around his ankles. The elastic is broken and Lawrence kicks the useless shorts over the side. Art Powell comes crashing down next to Lawrence. He can't believe what he's seeing, but they've got bigger problems than missing shorts. Behind them, Oakville is in trouble. The ramming attacks have torn open some of the ship's hull plates. Down below, water rushes into the boiler room. It could be catastrophic.
Cut the engines!
The rough seas begin pushing Oakville away from U-94. The gap opens up, and it's too far for the rest of the boarding team to jump. Lawrence and Powell are on their own. The two men move forward towards the conning tower, steadying themselves as the deck rocks in the foaming ocean. Finally, they reach the ladder and get ready to climb up onto the bridge. Suddenly, the rear hatch slams open, just a few meters in front of them. Two men raise their weapons, ready to face the new threat.
Come out with your hands up!
Captain Ittis and his executive officer climb out of the hatch and pull themselves up in front of the Canadians.
At the hull.
The German captain locks eyes with the Canadian. Then he looks down, then up again. He's equal parts confused and horrified.
Was glaubst du, was sie mit uns vorhaben?
Ich will's lieber nicht wissen.
Ittis and his executive officer leap off the side of the submarine and start swimming away as quickly as possible. Lawrence and Powell dash over as the two Germans disappear off into the darkness.
They won't make it far in these waves.
Right. Up to the bridge.
They scramble up the ladder, pulling themselves up onto the bridge.
Let's get them all out.
Lawrence shouts down to the Germans.
I promise I won't shoot. Come up and you'll be all right.
It's a simple choice. Stay below and drown, or come up top and surrender. The Germans rush up the ladder and scramble onto the deck. Our Powell quickly takes control of the situation.
Everybody, get down onto the deck.
Lawrence free to climb down the ladder and into the conning tower. Hand over hand, he descends into the pitch-black void. Steadying himself, he recognizes the submarine's control room from the captured manuals he's studied over the years. Somewhere on the port side should be the flooding valves. If he can switch those off, he can save this U-boat. He reaches out and runs his hands across the handles. But something's wrong. He can't find the controls he needs. The Germans might have smashed the handles off before he arrived. Suddenly, there's an enormous thud that rocks the entire hull. The compartments are collapsing under pressure.
Come on, sir! She's going down!
With disappointment, Lawrence pulls himself away from the surge and swims through the flooded interior towards the ladder. He climbs the slick metal rungs. He realizes the Germans got the better of him and admits defeat.
Get everyone off, now.
The prisoners and the Canadians leap into the water and swim away from the sinking U-boat. They watch solemnly as the boat tips its nose down, raises its screws into the air, and sinks beneath the waves. Lawrence, Powell, and their German prisoners were rescued from the water shortly afterwards. The two Canadians received medals for their bravery, while Captain Otto Ittis was taken prisoner with his crew and spent the rest of the war in the US as a POW. Thanks for staying until the end. If you wish to see more exciting stories, don't miss our previous compilation, 7 incredible modern battles.